When we play in-game Pokemon, we're all about cramming our Pokemon, especially our starters, full of as many stab moves as possible. It tends to be the case that you will have both the stronger, more inaccurate option, like your Fire Blast, your Hydro Pumps, and the more accurate, higher PP option, like your Flamethrowers and Surfs. The competitive scene is not so lenient with what it allows for regarding optimized movesets. There are too many branches a Pokemon must cover with its 4 moves for it to be wasting 2 of them on the same roll. In short, you have to choose between Fire Blast and Flamethrower, between Hydro Pump and Surf, before the battle even starts, not on the turn you're going to use them. This leads to one of the oldest debates in Pokemon. Do you go with the stronger, less accurate option, whose extra power can grab KOs that would otherwise elude you, but can also deal with a whopping 0% on turns? Or do you go with the weaker option that, despite the downgrade in power, making it less out-and-out threatening to the opponent, is always going to connect when you need to? There isn't always a clear-cut answer, and there are so many nuances with this kind of part of the game. So we're going to explore just how important accuracy is in this video, the Heatran Theorem. But first, before we talk about how important accuracy is, let's be accurate. There's only one mobile RPG that has hundreds of champions to collect, and that game is the sponsor of this video, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is one of the biggest mobile RPGs in the world, and did I mention hundreds of champions? Because that is the best part about Raid Shadow Legends. Leveling up your champions by doing the campaign, and then using the rewards to acquire even better champions. I love looking through every faction and seeing all of their champions. My favorite new faction is by far the Shadow Kid. The coolest ones being Fen Shi, who has 2 heated katanas, Masamoto, who is the least edgy looking of them but is still sick, and Gori, who is a ghost samurai. And for new players, you can get your hands on Stagnite, one of the best epic champions around, as well as a bonus skin for Stagnite. Just use the promo code JTSKIN before October 7th. It's as easy as that. Don't worry, if you're not a new player, you can still get Stagnite and the skin through an in-game event. And everybody likes free stuff, right? Especially when the free stuff in question is a legendary champion. Check out Sun Wukong, Raid's take on the Monkey King from Chinese mythology. He's made his grand appearance in the game, and it couldn't be easier to get him. Just log in on 7 different days between now and October 23rd to get your hands on him. And with all this exciting stuff and more coming to Raid, use my link in the description or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses. We are talking an epic champion, knight errants, and other useful things. Once you're in and crushing your enemies, come find me under the name Kellen FSG. So just hit my link on the description and I'll see you on the battlefield. First, we must acknowledge that there is a limit for what is considered reasonable. The debate is generally between the given examples, those being Fire Blast with its 85% accuracy and Hydro Pump with its 80%. Those are as low as you're reasonably going to go for a stab or important coverage. Put it this way, the debate is never between Thunderbolt and Thunder, or Ice Beam and Blizzard, because Thunder and Blizzard sit at 70% accuracy, which is far too unreliable. There are a few exceptions, of course, pretty much always revolving around Thunder. In Generations 3 and especially 2, this idea doesn't always apply because games are slower paced enough for a miss to not be game breaking, and the Pokemon are often bulky enough to require the extra strength to break through. This is most prominent in GSC Zapdos' Thunder being its biggest weapon, though one will also occasionally see Thunder Jirachi and even Tyranitar in advance. Beyond that, one will only see such inaccurate moves being used either with the support of their respective weathers, rain and hail, that makes them perfectly accurate, or in the fringe case of there truly not being another option, Gen 5 Reuniclus, for example, sometimes runs Thunder because it doesn't learn Thunderbolt. If it did, it almost surely would go with the consistency of T-Bolt. We also must consider the fact that accuracy may not be the only factor in choosing between such moves. As mentioned in the introduction, the more accurate moves also have much more PP. You only get 8 Fire Blasts and Hydro Pumps, but you get a whopping 24 Flamethrowers and Surfs. In short games, the PP factor might not be as impactful, but there are all sorts of tactics that can quickly make the choice to use these moves as something to be taken advantage of, turning their existence against their opponent. The most obvious is the move Protect, which can be used on more aggressive teams, as well as slower ones, but there's also the pressure ability, not just exclusive to defensive Pokemon, which halves the already low PP of these moves. Even the move Substitute, a staple on offense, can make the use of Fire Blast miserable. Doubly so actually, since in addition to stealing PP, it also forces Fire Blast to hit multiple times. Speaking of needing to hit multiple times, that's another downside of the Hydro versus Surf debate. You need to simply Surf the opponent twice to win? Sure, no problem. You need to Hydro the opponent twice to win? Well, that's a much riskier proposition, since you need to get an 80% chance twice, meaning your odds of victory are really closer to 64%. Well, not exactly, since even this simplified scenario, you can also crit one of those Hydros, but those are also not exactly great odds. The flip side of this coin that makes this such a potential dilemma, of course, is that many offensive Pokemon might not quite be as impactful in their threat level without the higher base power of their moves bringing out the full extent of their potential strength. When dealing with a threatening Pokemon like Heatran or Greninja, what makes them so potentially overwhelming to the point where they threaten to brute force the opponent with the slightest chip damage is just how hard they hit with Fire Blast or Hydro Pump. You really have to be careful about switching Clefable into them, for example. However, when they swap those moves out for Flamethrower or Surf, well, they still hit hard, and it'd be silly to suggest otherwise, as there are still powerful Pokemon. However, opponents tend to breathe a sigh of relief when they see the opponent isn't hitting them as hard as they could be. It means they are able to leverage their bulk more easily. This doesn't mean just include making it tougher for bulky Pokemon to withstand them over the course of a game, but also in threatening and landing one-hit KOs these Pokemon need in several key matchups, such as Heatran or Specs Water against a bulky Pokemon that drops to the harder hit but survives the weaker one, like Bronzong or Tyranitar. It's a tough catch-22. This ability to utilize bulk if the opponent goes with the safer option is something far more consistently reliable than hoping for the move to eventually miss. It always seems that just when you need that infamous accuracy to work against your opponent, they wind up going 8 for 8 on Hydro Pump when missing even one would have given you the game. Then again, the higher PP and greater reliability of Surf hitting allows it to be used repeatedly, thus increasing chances for devastating critical hits, while Flamethrower can even burn. Really, the accuracy dilemma serves to highlight just how much RNG there is in Pokemon at every corner. One way to look at it is that it depends on your team and its playstyle. If your team aims to end the game quickly, need the extra power. Sure, misses are more costly in shorter games, but the idea is that you wouldn't be getting the KOs you absolutely need if you go with the weaker move anyway, thus defeating the point in the first place. There are so many factors that go into these things, like teammates for one, that the sum answer really winds up as it depends, since even the best, most experienced players can't seem to agree. Speaking of RNG, this is also why Scald and Lava Plume have emerged as popular accuracy-friendly alternatives to their harder-hitting counterparts, especially after Gen 6 nerfed the base power of the stronger moves, so the disparity between them was lower. What Scald and Plume lack in direct power, they make up for with their increased, obnoxious 30% chance for a burn, so they can both maintain accuracy and PP and get the extra power of their harder-hitting counterparts in their own roundabout way. Of course, Fire Blast versus Flamethrower, sometimes versus Lava Plume as well, and Hydro Pump versus Surf versus Scald are far from the only examples. Another famous one, and probably the most extreme, is Draco Meteor versus Dragon Pulse. This one has a major difference though, in that the power disparity between Meteor and Pulse is greater than that between the two classic examples. Whereas Blast and Pump sit at 110 versus Flamethrower and Surf's 90, or 120 versus 95 pre-Gen 6 nerfs, Draco's base 130 is much higher, and pre-Gen 6 nerf, it was even stronger, sitting at a whopping base 140. Draco is so much stronger that players will take all of its flaws over the weaker Dragon Pulse. The lower PP, the half special attack after a use, the lower accuracy. It helps though that players don't really consider Draco Meteor an inaccurate move in the way they do Fire Blast, and that's because Draco Meteor sits at a far more comfortable 90% hit rate. It's the sub 90% stuff that starts to get people wondering. Funnily enough, Draco Meteor's lower miss chance has even been known to help it at times. The opponent might bait a Draco and switch to something to absorb it and get the Draco user to -2 special attack, thus neutralizing it, only for Draco to miss and the threat to persist. You can see this in Magearna's choice of Fairy Stab as well. Floor Cannon, yes. Dazzling Gleam, never. Now if Magearna got Moonblast, there'd be a debate, and it's strange that it doesn't, by the way, but as it stands now, it takes the less accurate lower PP special attack dropping option for its insane strength relative to the next option every time. Another example in this vein One more drastic, extreme, and thus arguably more emblematic of the concept is how Stone Edge has completely eclipsed Rock Slide as an offensive move in singles. The base power jump from Slide 75 to Edge's 100 is so huge in enabling threats like Choice Band Tyranitar and Mega Aerodactyl that they are completely willing to put up with Stone Edge's 80% accuracy. Stone Edge used to be called the worst move in the game for both players in a battle because it also has a high crit rate, so it seemed like it either missed or crit, but it tended to miss a lot more. For some reason, Stone Edge has historically seen to miss a lot more than Hydro Pump, though that's not to say Hydro Pump doesn't also miss constantly. Still, it goes to show just how important the power boost is. In their case, they're willing to discard Rock Slide's 90% accuracy and even 30% flinch rate because its 25 less points of base power means it doesn't even come close to the way Stone Edge immediately drops opponents. Since we mentioned the title of the worst move in the game, allow us to present what has clearly unilaterally earned that honor. Focus Blast. Focus Blast is not just aggravating because its 70% accuracy is absolutely pathetic. This is hardly better than a 2/3 chance, which doesn't sound so bad on paper until you realize that people already regularly lose their minds over the woes of 85% Fire Blast, to say nothing of Hydro Pump and Stone Edge at 80%. What really makes Focus Blast horrendous though is not just its necessary place on many important Pokemon's movesets, it's also the fact that these Pokemon do not have an alternative. There is no choice between Focus Blast and its weaker, more accurate counterpart. It's Focus Blast or bust. If you don't use Focus Blast on these Pokemon, you may as well not even use them at all. It is so crucial to their functioning. And the worst part, these are amazing Pokemon that you want to be using. This is why Focus Blast is the epitome of the necessary evil aspect of inaccurate moves. Now wait, you might say, a move called Aura Sphere exists. Yes, it does. But thanks to its strangely limited distribution, the best Pokemon around do not get access to it. We're talking Alakazam, Mega and non-Mega alike. We're talking Reuniclus, and Focus Blast is far more crucial in aspect to its moveset than Thunder, which is a luxury. We're talking Gengar, we're talking Mega Charizard Y, we're talking Tapu Lele. No move has lost more otherwise won games than Focus Blast. All that Zam or Gengar, great as they are at dominating teams, will need to do to finish things off is blast Tyranitar or Heatran or Ferrothorn or pre-Gen 6 Clefable into oblivion, and then the move misses, and that's it. If these Pokemon got Aura Sphere, rest assured Focus Blast would never be seen again. Instead, their alternative is the absolutely paltry hidden power fighting, which perfectly epitomizes the concept of you might hit, but you're not actually going to hurt anything, so don't even bother. Here's how terrible Focus Blast is. If you need to hit 2 out of 2 Focus Blast, you have a 49% chance to do so. Basically a coin flip. A coin flip in which your opponent is actually slightly favored. You are the lucky one if you hit both of those blasts. Some players have tried everything possible to make these Pokemon work without Focus Blast to decent results, but they just become so much easier to deal with without the move. Then again, forcing your opponent to hit one Focus Blast, let alone multiple, is actually pretty decent odds for victory. And what if the opponent chooses to not use these Focus Blast users? Well, seeing as that means your opponent is choosing not to bring some of the scariest Pokemon in the game, then that makes that a win as well. There are other necessary evils in terms of accuracy, though none quite so drastic as Focus Blast. Tornadus Therian really does not enjoy running a 70% accurate stab in Hurricane, but it is its strongest move by far, and it's generally bulky enough to where it can afford to miss 1 or 2, so it generally gets by, especially since Hurricane brings with it a nasty 30% confusion rate. Still, some Auras Tornadus even run Air Slash for the boost to 95% accuracy, despite the insane drop from 110 to 75 base power. That's how important actually hitting the move can be. Of course, it helps that Air Slash has a 30% flinch rate. Another example is Heatran, who for its Fire Stab chooses not Fire Blast, but Magma Storm, which is even less accurate, but comes with the ability to remove the opponent's ability to switch out and rack up significant extra chip damage on them. The trapping effect is particularly important in allowing Heatran to forcibly remove an opposing wall for the benefit of a teammate, guaranteeing it picks up its target. These moves are necessary evils, but unlike Focus Blast, it's usually only most of the time, and they do have at least a little bit of negotiability, especially as Hurricane and Magma Storm in Gen 7 are often equipped with a corresponding Z Crystal, which can for one turn power them up and remove their accuracy woes. The truly Focus Blast tier irreplaceable moves are those like Will-O-Wisp, Toxic, Leech Seed, and post-Gen 7 Thunderwave, whose accuracy are often lamented, but there is no other alternative for them, and they hit reliably and enough in the case of Will-O-Wisp, so they are used. This actually brings us to the idea that though accuracy is mostly thought of in terms of attacking moves, these support moves' accuracy can be similarly influential in battles. We don't tend to think of Leech Seed, Toxic, or Will-O-Wisp misses as game-breaking in the same way we might think of the most immediate and dramatic effect of Draco Meteor, but this is a bias that overlooks just how key they can be. Many Pokemon are dealt with defensively through indirect means, and a Pokemon that would be perfectly manageable if hit by such a move can quickly spiral out of control should the move miss. Celebi Leech Seeds the Salamence as it Dragon Dances, the Mence might do some damage, but it'll be dealt with. Leech Seed misses, the game is probably over. Garchomp Swords Dances and the opponent goes for Toxic, same deal. The necessary evil style of inaccurate moves brings a level of simplicity to the idea that isn't really present in deciding whether you want power or accuracy. You simply must go with that option. There is a flip side of sorts to this coin though. It is rarer. Now it's not quite the opposite because the choice is still technically there, but one of the two choices is quite a dumb one. This refers to the idea of overkill, or greed if you prefer. It's when a Pokemon is so hilariously strong that you really don't need the stronger option because it's going to be destroying everything anyway. So all you tend to wind up doing in practice is give your opponent an out by choosing the move that can miss in the team builder. The classic example is Mega Charizard Y, whose drought-powered Fire Stab is ludicrously strong, smashing through even most resists with ease, while most neutral targets get similarly destroyed. So what do? Use Fire Blast, of course, and wind up killing nothing because you missed something that you actually hit super effectively. Seriously though, Zardwise Flamethrower is already insanely strong. There's no need for overkill. Another example might be Specs Ash Greninja under Rain, a monster so strong even pre-evolution that pretty much all that's keeping the opponent in the game in many circumstances is the fact that it might miss Hydro Pump. Surf tends to be superior on it for this reason. Now at the very beginning, we mentioned how competitive Pokemon don't get to just load up on nothing but stab moves, but some Pokemon are fortunate or good enough to be able to. Keldeo is the most famous example. Its coverage move pool, famously lacking Ice Beam, is so sparse that it regularly runs both Hydro Pump and Surf or Scald. If you have a Pokemon like this, you're able to have the best of both worlds. Sure, you'll still miss an occasional Hydro, but if you do, it's because you needed to use it for its power at that point in battle, not because you didn't have the more accurate move as an option. Heatran has been seen on many occasions doing the same, running both Overheat or Magma Storm alongside Flamethrower or Lava Plume. In fact, that is part of why we chose Heatran to illustrate this theorem. But the main reason was that every part of it applies to this monster. It is the epitome of Fire Blast versus Flamethrower, except it's complicated even further because it also occasionally ventures into necessary evil territory with Magma Storm and has another save option that can consistently wind up compensating for its lower power through a reliable secondary effect distribution in the form of the burn distributing Lava Plume. Heatran is also one of the most important Pokemon in the game for its resistances to such an enormous slew of attacks, and is one of the biggest reasons for forcing Focus Blast coverage on Pokemon whose stabs it can switch into, placing itself on the other side of the necessary evil concept. There's little worse than attempting to Focus Blast your way through a Heatran that's draining your PP with Protect, possibly Substitute, and trying to burn you with Lava Plume. Yes, Sub-Protect trend also factor into making players shy away from low accuracy moves, because it loves preying on their low PP. Oh, and Heatran has been a long time user of Will-O-Wisp and Toxic as well. It can completely ruin opponents switching into or attempting to set up on it, so long as they hit, even if the move doesn't have as dramatic an impact as a robbed KO. There are so many different nuances factoring into accuracy, but Heatran is incredible at demonstrating that it is, indeed, an integral part of the game that must be considered. Thanks for watching, everyone, and as always, if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Right Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content, and in the comments, I want to know, where do you fall on this accuracy debate? And thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos, and thank you to everyone else watching as well. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.